So given that it is a new year and a new kind of session, I'm going to begin by reading a poem. It's not really a poem. It comes from Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's a kind of contemplation, really, called Beginning Anew. So I'm going to ring the bell and invite you right now to take a few breaths with the sound of the bell and just allow your all the activities that have come before to fall away, and to just presence yourself here with me, with each other, and with these words of beginning anew, traditional Dharma teaching from Thich Nhat Hanh. With great respect, we turn towards Shakyamuni Buddha, the conqueror of afflictions. We have lived in forgetfulness for a long time, since we have not had the opportunity to encounter the Dharma. We have brought about our own suffering. We have been blinded by our wrong perceptions. Our heart's garden is sown with attachment, anger, and pride. In us are seeds of killing, stealing, misconduct, and lies. Our everyday deeds and words do damage. All these wrong actions obstruct our peace and joy. Let us begin anew. We are often thoughtless, straying from the path of mindfulness. We are a storehouse of suffering, worry, and anxiety. A storehouse built on wrong perceptions. And we have become weary of life. Because we do not understand others, we maintain ill will against them. Even after a dispute has been resolved, we continue to feel separate, and the gap between us widens. There are days when we are unwilling to speak to each other, unwilling to look each other in the face. Now, we turn to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, sincerely recognizing our errors, and we bow our heads. We know so well that in our consciousness, all the wholesome seeds are planted. Seeds of love and understanding, and seeds of peace and joy. But if we do not know how to nourish them, and if we always allow sorrow to overwhelm them, how can they spring up fresh and green? When we chase after distant happiness, life becomes but a shadow of reality. Our mind is always occupied by the past or worrying about this and that in the future. We cannot let go of our anger, and we long for what we have to be permanent, and so we bury our real happiness. As month follows month, we are sunk in sorrow. Now we recognize our errors and begin anew, fragrant as a breath of fresh air. With all our heart, we go for refuge, turning to the Buddhas in the 10 directions, to all the bodhisattvas, noble disciples, and self-realized Buddhas. We very sincerely recognize our errors and the mistakes of our wrong judgments. Please bring the balm of clear water to pour over the roots of our afflictions. Please bring the raft of the true teachings to carry us over the ocean of sorrows. We vow to live an awakened life, to learn the path of true happiness, and to practice breathing and smiling. Diligently, we vow to live in mindfulness. We return to live in the wonderful present moment, to plant our heart's garden with good seeds, to cultivate the foundations of understanding and love, and to follow the way of mindfulness. We practice looking and understanding deeply to be able to see the nature of all that is, and so to be free of the bonds of birth and death. We learn to speak lovingly, to be affectionate, to care for others, whether it is early morn or late afternoon, to plant the seeds of joy, helping others to abandon sorrow, to respond with gratitude to the kindness of parents, teachers, and friends. We ask the Bodhisattva of compassion to be our protector on the wonderful path of practice. We vow to walk every step of the path with energy so that our practice may bear fruit. And so we begin anew. And we recognize in those words not just what is occurring within ourselves a lot of the time, but also in the collective, and how we are intimately connected to that collective in this relationship of interbeing that Thich Nhat Hanh so beautifully talks about. So before I talk about deep listening, which is the topic that rose to the surface for me as I was contemplating resuming our time together under the circumstances of what's going on in the world around us, I want to talk for a moment about concentration. Because I think sometimes in our practice of meditation, we tend to sort of space out and float. And the practice of mindfulness is really about being very concentrated. And it is really one of the, remember we talked about the 6 paramitas, the perfections that take us to the other shore. Concentration is one of those paramitas. And so when we practice, when we come into this practice together, I want to invite us to focus with deep concentration on the breath. Meaning we come back to the breath over and over again. Whenever we remember that we've wandered off, we come back. And we take another breath. We don't beat ourselves up or make a big story about it. We just simply come back. And we use the breath as an anchor for our mind. This is discipline. And it's mind training. So that we don't just wander off. This is mostly what we're doing, is we're just wandering off here and there and everywhere. And the practice really is about training our minds to stay focused, training our minds to be single-pointed so that we have a choice about where our attention goes. And this is so useful. So to stay with the breath, stay with the in-breath and the out-breath, in and out, deep and slow, calm, ease, smile, release, present moment, only moment, over and over again. And we train like this so that we're not carried away by all the emotions of the day, all that's coming at us, but that we have this stable ground within us. So when we ring the bell and take our seat and sit for 20 minutes, that's what we're doing. We're coming back over and over again to the breath. This beautiful source of connection to all there is. that is right here all the time. So deep listening is also very much facilitated by the breath, by being able to be present and calm, relaxed, open. This is what the practice of mindfulness can teach us. And so it feels to me like communication, good communication is such an art. And that it's really going to be a key for us to get through these times when we are so polarized and so reactive in the world. And we're so triggered by that. So, also to recognize the way in which, and I'll speak for myself, I get so on edge, so anxious, filled with unease with all of this going on. Having practiced for 30 years to be open to not only receive the other, but also the whole collective, right? So it's a situation we find ourselves in where we can become very triggered very quickly. We also feel very unsafe a lot of the time right now, and probably will be for a while. There's a lot of unraveling going on in different directions. So all of that is just such a recipe for reactivity and for conflict, even if it's unintentional. So our practice of mindfulness is a training in being aware, being conscious, being intentional, and being present for what is arising, whatever it is. And through being, relaxed in the present moment, we really do learn to be more open to others' viewpoints. And to listening. Because we've learned how to kind of let go into a bigger context where we're all here together. We may not agree, every time, but we're open to receiving others' viewpoints. Actually, this is another little thing I wanted to read from Thich Nhat Hanh, invoking the Bodhisattva's names. And this is the invocation for Avalokiteshvara, which is an inspiration to the practice of deep listening. It says, we invoke your name, Avalokiteshvara. We aspire to learn your way of listening in order to help relieve the suffering of the world. You know how to listen in order to understand. We invoke your name in order to practice listening with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will sit and listen without prejudice. We will sit and listen without judging or reacting. We will sit and listen in order to understand. We will sit and listen so attentively that we will be able to hear what the other person is saying and also what has been left unsaid. We know that just by listening, we already alleviate a great deal of pain and suffering in the other person. When we know how to come back to our breath and connect the body, speech, and mind, the speech is breath, in the present moment, we can truly hear what is being said and what is being unsaid. I think being considerate is a quality that has become so lost in our world. that capacity to listen and to be open to another. I think indigenous people have that capacity sort of built in, the dignity in a particular way of being that operates in a little slower than we do in most of our lives. And we need to remember that skill of being dignified and considerate in the way that we interact with each other in order to hear what needs to be said and to be open to the differences that are amongst us. I think one of the poisons, well, there's a couple of poisons we talk about in Buddhism. There's the 5 poisons, and one of them is pride. Pride that prevents us from admitting our shortcomings. The wisdom of pride that's held inside that reactive emotion of pride, according to the teachings, is equanimity. So equanimity means we go down the middle. It means we're open and able to stay in balance and not be so reactive, to rest in that calm state that is what we cultivate in this practice. And to, therefore, be open to receiving others' viewpoints and seeing both sides without reacting or defending. When we're triggered, and we are a lot of the time these days, right? I'm just going to say that again, right? Are you guys with me? You're being very quiet and still. So I'm just checking. I'm saying all of this for me. So I'm trusting that it's also for you. Yeah. Okay, good. So that feeling of being triggered, it's our little selves that get so triggered. And when we're triggered, we lash out. We can't hear the other person. It all happens so quickly. In an instant, we lose our mindfulness. Our equanimity is just out the window. But when we can remember, because we've been practicing diligently, to just take another breath when we notice that we're being triggered, when our pride is getting, activated or whatever it happens to be, and return. We take a breath and we return in an instant to that equanimity. And as we do that, we learn to do that over and over and over again. We build this stable base of calm abiding, and the mindfulness becomes more and more present in everything we do, so that we can hear and see what is, and so that we can respond lovingly. So it's a practice of compassion for self and for other. There's a lot more I could say about this, and I have a lot of notes here, and I'm just kind of scanning through and thinking, well, maybe there's more for this another time, because I can see we need to get to our practice. Ignoring is another of the 5 poisons, and it's a way we push aside the issues, because we don't know how to talk about it. And patience, is another aspect of, the practice that we learn, patience, But when we get triggered, that impatience, which is such a habitual pattern for so many of us, just enters in, and we lose our mindfulness. So we come back to the breath. And when we do, we calm ourselves down, and we can hear what's being said and what's been left unsaid. And we can be with each other with all of, with all the colors, much more easily. In the practice of meditation, there's the sort of Zen style of sitting. We're asked not to scratch the itch when it arises in our formal sitting practice. When we ring the bell and we take our seat, at that point, we are sitting in stillness. And we don't just, do this whenever it's there. We know that by observing the itch, noticing, we don't have to respond to every single little itch, that it will pass. That little itch will pass. And meanwhile, we stay focused and concentrated on the practice, which is following the breath, coming back over and over to the present moment. If we allow the habit of scratching every little itch, we'll never learn to go beyond our unconscious reactive patterns. And if that impatience governs all of our relationships and communications, we miss the tenderness that can fill our hearts and fulfill our longing and bring us together, which is what we need now in the world. Thank you.